Recently, I've been carrying out an experiment to see whether or not more food equals more baby shrimp. I've essentially been deliberately overfeeding my shrimp tank to see whether or not I can encourage my cherry shrimp to produce more babies. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the results. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Richard and I'm the author of the Neocaridina Shrimp Handbook. So what's the idea of overfeeding my tank to produce more babies? Essentially, when our shrimp have babies, when the female kicks the babies out of the eggs, those baby shrimp will end up staying wherever they land for 1 or 2 weeks. Baby shrimp tend to remain very local for the first week or two of their lives. Now here's the problem. If a female cherry shrimp kicks out 20 or 30 babies and all 20 or 30 end up in more or less the same space, there frequently isn't enough food available to feed all of those shrimp. As a result, from those 20 or 30 babies, maybe only 3 or 4 end up surviving long enough to venture out into the wider aquarium to become fully grown adults. My theory is the more food I add to this aquarium, the more babies will survive. Now, let's add a very quick caveat here in that I'm talking about my red cherry shrimp. I'm talking about Neocaridina shrimp. I'm not talking about Caridina shrimp. If you've got bee shrimp, I would not recommend overfeeding your aquarium. In fact, I would strongly recommend underfeeding your aquarium, but that's for another video. Neocaridina shrimp, your red cherries, your green jades, your black rose, your blue diamonds, whatever they might be, are typically far hardier than the bee shrimp, and therefore they respond much better to overfeeding. Now there's another caveat in this video. I've spent the last 12 or 18 months encouraging you guys to create a stable environment. I've been encouraging you to try and create a stable environment where those shrimp are essentially left alone. Because I am actively overfeeding this tank, I have to do the opposite of my advice. I have to carry out regular partial water changes. In fact, I have to carry out 50 to 60% water changes every single week. Otherwise, all of this additional food will pollute the tank and will give me an ammonia spike, or it will cause my nitrates or my nitrate levels to rise so high, it will be detrimental to the health of the shrimp. Now, if you want to become a better shrimp keeper or just take your shrimp keeping to the next level, why not check out my new book, the Neocaridina Shrimp Handbook, which is 97 pages, jam-packed full of information about shrimp keeping, feeding, and breeding, and has been described as the most comprehensive book ever written about Neocaridina shrimp. So bearing in mind, I'm specifically talking Neocaridina shrimp, and I'm doing this in a controlled way where I am having to change a lot of water. Let's talk about how I've got on. So first off, what food am I feeding my shrimp? Well, this is essentially, it's a very fine powdered food, but I'm not buying special food. I'm not buying expensive food. I'm literally taking the fish food I already have. In this case, it's tropical flakes. I'm adding them to a spice grinder or a coffee grinder, and I'm grinding them down into a fine powder. I then take this powder and add it to a small airtight container so that every day I can take 1 pinch of this powdered food and sprinkle it into the aquarium. And the reason I've ground the food up into a powder is I want it to essentially disperse. I want it to become a cloud that goes and covers every surface in the tank with essentially microscopic food. I want it to get down in the cracks and crevices. I want it to land behind the plants and into the rocks and everywhere that my baby shrimp may well end up. The idea being, no matter where the female kicks out the babies, there will be food sitting there waiting for them. Now, although we're only in the early stages, this experiment's only been running for a few weeks, and I probably have to run it for another 4 or 5 months before I can call it either way. I've been so encouraged by the results. I have been amazed for a relatively new tank how many baby shrimp I have seen on the sides of the glass, on the back, on the rocks, etc. I've deliberately set this breeding tank up in such a way that there are hundreds and hundreds of different cracks and crevices where the babies can end up. I've set this tank up to produce as many babies as possible. And I have no doubt that for every 1, 2, 3 babies I see, there are probably 10 or 15 tucked away in the rocks still waiting to come out and show themselves. I'm also absolutely delighted. I only put about 20 shrimp in this tank. It's probably a mix of about 75% females. I would say 10 or 12 of those females are currently buried. And if 10 or 12 female shrimp go on to kick out 20 or 30 babies, within a few months, we'll have hundreds and hundreds of cherry shrimp in this tank. And I've got no doubt that is because I am intentionally overfeeding it to get the food down to the babies. Now, it's important to point out at this point, if you're new to shrimp keeping, I would not recommend overfeeding your tank deliberately. If you're going to deliberately overfeed your tank, you have to have a good understanding of water chemistry. You have to have a good understanding of managing your water parameters. Otherwise, you may well find you end up with an ammonia spike, and nothing will kill your shrimp quicker than an ammonia spike. You may well find out that any of that uneaten food breaks down and starts to cause the nitrite or the nitrate levels in your tank to raise to a point where it becomes detrimental to the health of the shrimp. So I'm taking all that into account, and I'm breaking my own advice, and I'm carrying out large partial water changes. I'm probably draining down 50 or 60% of the water every single week so that I can maintain the quality and still overfeed the shrimp. Under normal circumstances, I might advise you only feed your shrimp as much as they would consume in, 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on what you're feeding them. I certainly wouldn't recommend feeding them every single day unless you're actively trying to grow your colony. I have to say, this experiment has proved so successful that I've now extended it to my black rose colony. This colony of black rose shrimp are absolutely stunning, and I really want to increase the number of babies that I'm getting from that tank. So I've now decided I'm going to add a pinch of powdered food to this tank every single day as well, and see if I can replicate the results I'm getting up here with them. And again, I will have to carry out the water changes. I will have to keep on top of my water quality. Otherwise, I could easily lose the colony. Essentially, even at this early stage, I'm gonna say more food does equal more babies, providing you follow the rules, providing you keep up with your water changes and you keep on top of the water quality. Now, did you know I've got a playlist of over 100 videos all about keeping, breeding and feeding cherry shrimp? And I also recently recorded the first episode of a new shrimp keeping podcast with Mark from Mark Shrimp Tanks, and I'll put that down here. Thanks for watching.